Good morning everyone, welcome back to another video. Haven't made a video in probably over 2 months now. Been really busy with a newborn on the way and we just bought a house, so kind of been working a little bit extra at my normal job. Anyways, it's 2 a.m. Figured we go on a quick drive and I kind of want to talk about this, an automatic 370z Nismo. Now, before you unsub, dislike, start calling me names, let me tell you that I've actually owned both. My first Z was an 09 6-speed. I've had that car for a while actually. I daily drove it throughout my last 2 years of undergrad, did 2 to 3 years of my first hospital job in it, and then also it got me throughout PA school. So 5 to 6 years of daily driving that thing, 70,000 miles later. Number one, I'm not a loser. Number two, let me just tell you what my experience has been, you know, kind of having both. Ultimately, you know, I've had that car for 5-6 years and I loved it so much that I ended up trading it in for another one. This time it's the Nismo. But we have this wretched 7-speed automatic. Share with you a different perspective on this transmission. I know the whole internet is convincing you that any automatic sports car isn't worth being a sports car. Let me start first talking about the more objective points of this car. These paddle shifters, they're actually high quality. Like, these are the same paddle shifters that you get from GTR 2009 up to 2016 era. It has a nice feel to it. It sounds good every time you shift it. It's probably the same shifter that you have like an Infiniti G35 or even like Nissan Maxima. But other than that, you know, it's not like those plastic paddles that you have in more modern sports cars. And then let's talk about this actual transmission itself. 7-speed. In-house, hopefully built in Japan. It's actually, you know, nearly bulletproof. I've been researching on the forums. 90% of the people that have experienced this or lived with it have only good things to say about it. You know, I don't really hear of any like catastrophic or common issues with this gearbox itself. You know, one thing that I did note was it probably doesn't handle, you know, track use as well. The car itself overheats, but when this car is operating at higher temperatures, at least the transmission, it starts to slip. And I remember experiencing that once when driving it really hard. So that's one thing to note when you get this car. You know, are you going to daily drive it or are you going to put it on the track? If you're going to put it on the track, you're probably not going to be happy with it. But going back to it, it's nearly bulletproof. You know, you have less maintenance with it being an automatic transmission versus a manual. And then my first time getting into this, it was way quicker off the line. Like, it felt like, you know, Nismo versus the base is like a 32 horsepower bump, maybe less, 23. Very small bump going from the base to the Nismo. But I just remember when I first got into this car, at least with the automatic gearbox, it felt like night and day difference. Like, it felt like getting off the line was so much quicker. It felt like it had like 50 plus horsepower. It really, like, you know, pinned you to the seats. You had no interruption in power. And I actually read that in the forums. It's actually due to what is like a shortened differential, final gear drives, whatever. Anyways, quicker off the line, 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, if that matters to you, and it's really easy to spin the tires. And this thing actually drives like a performance car, at least the transmission behaves like a performance car. When you put it in manual mode like it is right now, it's not going to shift for you. You can literally bounce it off the red line and destroy the engine, and the car won't do anything for you. And then also, it like rev matches your downshifts, you know. Even when putting it in, you know, automatic mode, it still, you know, for the most part drives like a performance car. It's not, you know, it doesn't behave like a Nissan Altima or Maxima or anything like that, but you know, it's nowhere near as close to, you know, a PDK. Maybe it's like 75-80%, the likes of you know, DCT. But it shifts really quick. The shifts are aggressive. And it really lets you control the car once you have it in manual mode. And then going more to the boring stuff, you know, no one really cares about MPG in a performance car. But me personally, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, gas can get expensive. So it's just nice to have, like, you know, your cruising car, your sports car, whatever, to have like, you know, 20 to 23 miles per gallon. That's usually what I've been averaging, versus when I had a manual, it was close to like 18 to 19. So not a huge difference, but you know, it is something. And then another thing with these cars in general, when you're shopping for them, in the 7-speed auto, it's just way more available, and it's probably better value because, you know, everyone is convinced that you only have to get this in manual. But anyways, enough of like the objective facts about this car. Let me tell you how I feel after like having this car. Like, first of all, I'm not here to convince you that the automatic transmission is better than the manual, that you should buy the automatic over the manual. 90% of you guys watching this video have probably already made up your mind. No matter what I say, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. If you have to think that getting the automatic is going to be better, most likely you're going to end up regretting your choice that you didn't get a manual transmission. So this is just me trying to kind of share my thoughts, my experience, and maybe give like a different perspective, because I feel like the internet is kind of training everyone to believe that, you know, manual performance cars are the absolute only way to go. So there's some things you kind of have to ask yourself when, you know, if you actually are on the fence, if you're 50-50 about getting the manual versus the automatic, you know, ask yourself, is this going to be your daily driver or strictly your weekend car? And also too, like, are you surrounded by, you know, tons of open back roads with nice turns, or do you live in a big city with endless traffic and never-ending construction? But for me, I think the biggest thing is, you know, have you ever experienced anything like this? Have you ever been in an automatic performance car before? You know, have you been daily driving a manual car for the last 15 years like me? Like, are you getting a little bit tired of it, or you want to try something new? Or are you just like a manual diehard and all of your performance cars have to be manual? Like, everyone's situation and preference is different. You know, just as like, you know, I can't convince a Mustang owner on getting a Corvette because he has his preference. He's made up your mind. He's made up his mind. But these are kind of like the biggest things that you should probably think about if you're actually considering on getting this as an automatic. You know, what's your situation like? Do you live in like open roads where you can enjoy it? Have you ever had a performance car like this before? You know, all those things. For me personally, you know, why do I like this as an automatic? I think the biggest thing for it is just being able to you know, enjoy all of the power this car has to offer. Like, you're not getting any interruptions in between shift. It's just constantly hitting you to the back of your seat. I've never had anything like that. I've never had a car that gave you that, you know, buzzy feeling in your stomach when you're going really fast. Yeah, granted, this is no Nissan GTR or Hellcat, but this is also just a $30,000-$40,000 sports car. with a solid gearbox. And I felt like with my 6-speed base, it's not a huge difference in power in Nismo versus the base, but I just felt like with that, manual gearbox, there were some faults with it. Like, one, you couldn't rush the shifts, and two, like when you're just casually driving it, when you're, putting very minimal effort, it felt heavy. It felt like you're kind of driving a truck. Like, first gear got you absolutely nowhere, and the engagement point was a little bit strange. And then also too, like I said, you can't really rush that gearbox, so unless you're absolutely pushing it, the car didn't really feel like a 300 horsepower type of car. And there are a lot of times too where I got smoked by Camrys. So going into something like this where you can actually enjoy all the power, there's no like interruption in speed in between shifts, never had that before. It's actually like a really fun feeling to have. It's a different experience. And then number two, my biggest thing liking this car, other than enjoying the speed and the quick acceleration, it's just that this car to me is like the ultimate cruiser. It has like dual personality. I can just drive this for hours and hours, regardless of whatever heat or climate, without feeling overly fatigued, versus driving a manual transmission car like with that one. It requires more work for the butt. And overall, like after 45 minutes driving through the city, you just get way more tired versus something like this. Like earlier today, I just drove this for like 2 hours straight in like 110 plus degree weather. I didn't feel that bad. It felt pretty comfortable. Like I said, it's not as fatiguing. I feel like I can drive this in big cities and take it on road trips. And then, if you just put it in auto mode, like I said, you don't have to think too much. You can just enjoy the car, relax and cruise. You can just hang out with your passenger. And then another thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about much in these cars versus its, counterpart, is just the fact that overall it's like less maintenance, less worry. Like, I'm not worried about having to change the clutch or where to throw a bearing or replace the flywheel. With these cars specifically, I don't have to worry about the clutch slave cylinder going out. I know that's a very, very common problem in 370s. When it goes out, your clutch pedal becomes super limp. I don't have to worry about it with this car. And then, like, I don't have to worry so much or think about having to, perfect my shifts to, heel toe or rev match whenever I downshift. And to me, like, less thinking into that aspect allows me to be more engaged in the car in terms of, like, enjoying the power, the acceleration, how it handles, taking your turns. To me, being able to focus more on the other aspects of driving makes me more engaged with this car. And that's another topic that I want to jump into right now, which is probably going to be the more controversial one. But let's talk about engagement. So this is probably like the most cliche thing that you'll hear on the internet when everyone compares an automatic versus a manual, is how much more engaging, how connected it is being able to, roll your gears. I'm not saying that's wrong, but hear me out on this. If you look at a car from a different perspective, more holistically, take this for example. You have a front mid-engine, rear-wheel drive sports car, 350 horsepower, 2-seater, hydraulic steering. That in itself is engaging. You have a Hellcat. It's not as fast as a Tesla Plaid, but it's more engaging. You have Huracan, 911 GT3, LFA. All those cars are still engaging. I'm not saying that this is, similar to those ones, but, theoretically, just because it doesn't have a manual gearbox doesn't mean the car isn't as engaging. Yes, I understand being able to, change your own gears or have a manual transmission for a lot of times can make it more engaging. Look at the S2000. If that thing had an automatic transmission, it would be weird. But you think about something like, the Civic Type R, has probably one of the best gearboxes that you can get in a modern day sports car. But, I haven't drove one before, but seeing other people's thoughts and reactions on it, sometimes, when they compare it to, its older sibling, like early 2000 Honda, even though it does have like one of the best gearboxes, they say it's not as engaging. And that kind of, brings me back to the point, like there's more aspects to the car that make it more engaging rather than just being able to change around the gears. And if you really think about it, I talked about this earlier, but if you really think about it, what other options do you have in this JDM sports car space? Like I said, Civic Type R, STI, GR Corolla, and Tiger Type S, all of them are manual only. What if I had bad knees? What if it did have a DCT option? How much cooler would that be? How much different would that car feel? I feel like if the Subaru STI had a DCT option, I would like 100% get it in that configuration, because I don't know, I feel like off the line it'll be much quicker, and I can really, take advantage of that all-wheel drive platform. But then, everything else, like outside of the JDM space, you have 911s, Mustangs, Camaros, M3s, all of them have, both manual and automatic. So, ultimately, it's just nicer to have. And then, you think about it now, a lot of manual transmissions in the modern day, they're not all that good. Sometimes they just feel very plasticky, very rubbery, not as engaging compared to like the early 2000s. Sometimes, for example, like the G80, it's better off as a ZF8 speed versus its manual counterpart. For some people, they prefer 911 turbo with the PDK over the manual. Like, I understand the novelty of having a manual. Like I said, everyone's preference and situation is different, and I just feel like, the gearbox really changes the character of the car. Not saying that the manual, changes it in a bad way, but also, if you think about it, the automatic doesn't make it worse either. They're just different, and it's perfectly fine to enjoy different things. So yeah, all that being said, would I go back to having this as a manual? Would I, buy the Nismo version in a manual form? After, living with one for 5 years, and then again with this for another 2 years, honestly, like 100%, if I were to buy it again, I would buy it in automatic. Because you gotta ask yourself, or at least what I ask myself, what's my purpose with this car? For me, it's just to have like a car that's like truly fast, that gives you that crazy feeling in your stomach. I've never had that before. That constant, power, acceleration on that torque that's been into your seat. You don't get any interruption in between shifts. And then another, for me, like this is, I'm not taking this on the track. I live in Vegas. Not only is there tons of traffic and lots of construction, but it is extremely hot. Driving a manual in that type of heat is just so exhausting. Requires more work, more effort. You're just too lazy. You're not in the mood to be having fun and rolling your gears. And overall, you just don't want to drive it. Versus something like this, I wouldn't mind driving this for like 2-4+ hours. Like, to me, this is like the ultimate cruiser car with dual personality. I can just put it in automatic mode and then just cruise, or I can, if I want to be more engaged, or if I'm in the mood to be more engaged and have more control of the car, I can just put it into manual mode. And like I said, manual mode actually behaves like a pretty good, automatic gearbox. It holds your shifts, it rev matches for you, it shifts really aggressively, it's quick. There's nothing wrong with this. And it's like a comfortable day car too. Like, you get to hold your partner's hand. They're not jerking around when you're shifting gears. They're not spilling their ice smoke all over your seats. So yeah, for me, like, dual purpose, dual personality type of car. And honestly, for me, this is as engaging as I want it to be. If anything, it's more so engaging in a different way. Because like I said, I get to enjoy the power. I get to, be more immersed within the environment. I get to focus on how I'm taking these turns. I get to feel the power. I get to listen to the sound. Like, I don't have to think about always needing to perfect my gear. And like I said, that in itself frees up my mental space, and I can think more about enjoying the car. And like for me, I just love driving this thing. In my mind, it's like the 911 GC3 that I'll never be able to afford, but you know, theoretically, if you look at it, it's fast, it looks cool, it's a top trim variant, it's rare, and it has all, like, you know, the good sports car characteristics. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Like I said, I'm not here to convince you that you should get an automatic. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong for liking an manual transmission only. Like I said, you probably made up your mind you're going to do whatever you're going to do. You know, it's like trying to convince that person to get a Camry and not a Miata or a Corvette. You know, they're going to end up doing whatever they want. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of like share my thoughts, and if you actually are on the fence or 50-50 about getting this versus a manual, or in general just having an automatic sports car, I just kind of wanted to share what I feel like hasn't been talked about online. So, should you buy this car as an automatic? Like I said, everyone's situation is different, everyone's preference is different. For me, like I said, this is a car where I want to feel its power. I want something with dual personality. I want the practicality of being able to not only drive it in traffic, but also drive comfortably through whatever 120-degree weather. And then most importantly too, I just like the low maintenance aspect of this car, like not having to worry about when I need to shift, not burning the clutch whenever I am ripping it hard. I don't have to worry that I'm breaking other components. Like, I feel like I just get to enjoy this car more. And then, like I said, for me, it makes me more engaged with this car than it has in the past. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you think? You know, have you made that conversion from manual to automatic? Are you on the fence a bit? Why are you sticking with manual only? Why do you actually prefer automatic? Let me know what you think. If you actually did switch, do you regret it? Anyways, hopefully I see you guys soon. Hopefully not the next 2 months. You guys have a good night. Take care. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.